the benefits of wind energy, you essentially want wind so that you can displace the burning of fuels. And as sort of a byproduct of that, it's really one of the main objectives of using wind energy is so that you can reduce the emissions that are created from burning the fuel. There's some other impacts as well. Natural gas prices